Good morning, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Ryan Dividock. I'm the supervisor for the Land Planning, Zoning, and Land Use Unit here in Oakland County. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to our next virtual planners gathering, Office to Residential Conversions, the Troy Experience. Just a few reminders today. The meeting's being recorded. And also, if you have questions, please use the chat function in Zoom. Jim Schaefer here will moderate a question and answer period after the presentation. So let's get started. Please join me in welcoming Brent Savidant, Community Development Director for the City of Troy. Brent, take it away.
Thanks, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Thank you to Jim, Scott, and Ryan for giving me the opportunity to present to you this morning. It's a really interesting topic. My name is Brent Savidant. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Troy. Just a brief history of how I got where I am. I was hired in 2002 as a principal planner, promoted to planning director about 10 years after that, and now I'm the Community Development Director. I oversee building, planning, and code enforcement in the City of Troy. And since 2002, I've either processed or overseen the processing of every development application in the City of Troy. I'm at the point now where I'm the guy with the institutional memory, and I have the gray hair to prove it. So today we're going to talk about conversions of offices to residential. And here's a brief outline of what we're going to talk about today. First, we'll start. I'll explain what Troy is today and how we got there, including planning and zoning efforts to get us where we are today. I'm going to talk briefly about the office and housing markets in nationally and in the Detroit market. Then we'll zero in on office conversions, and I'll give you two office conversion projects that we've processed and approved in the City of Troy. And then finally, we'll talk about what your community can do to approve these things. So let's get started. I'm going to start off with a disclaimer. I'm a planner. I'm not an architect, a contractor, an attorney, a broker, an economist, none of those things. So this is not going to be a deep dive. This is going to be kind of a cursory discussion about this topic. We could have a full day seminar on this topic at Oakland County and still not touch on everything. So I'm gonna go through these slides pretty quickly because there's a lot of information to go over. So Troy today, it's almost 90,000 people. It's the largest city in Oakland County. It's a business hub with over 6,000 businesses and 200 foreign companies. It's the second most diverse city in Michigan, behind Ann Arbor. When I go to the Troy Library at lunchtime, some days I hear 3 or 4 languages before I even hear English. It's a marvelous city to work in and live in. And just to give you a snapshot of the office and apartment market here, there's 278 office properties, over 17 million square feet of office. The vacancy rate today is about 25%. And there's over 8,000 apartment units that are either constructed or under construction. In terms of getting back to how great Troy is, recently livability.com published a list of the top 100 best places to live in the country. Three communities were for Michigan. Troy is number 10. The other two communities are Rochester Hills at 20 and Ann Arbor at 62. So we were 52 spots ahead of Ann Arbor. Is that good? Is that good? Seems good. I don't know. Seems pretty good. So anyways, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that fact. So let's start with a very, very brief history of Troy. Post-World War II, we started to boom. There's a lot of reasons for this. There were some struggles in the city of Detroit. I-75 was constructed. This is a aerial photograph taken in 1963 when I-75 was under construction. And right where it says Big Beaver, the B in Big Beaver is where I'm sitting right now. That's the future site of the Troy City Hall. In 1963, Big Beaver was a 2-lane road and a lot of farmers' fields. And we're going to talk about the transition here. You see this graph showing population growth. Starting in 1960, we had rapid population growth until about the turn of the century. Our land use policy during the boom years was controlling growth. We knew that development was coming, and it was just an effort to control it. And our policy was separating land uses. This is not unlike other suburbs throughout the country. Separating land uses was a top priority. Our policy focused on what we didn't want rather than what was desired. And you get what you plan for. So when I was hired here in 2002, if I forgot to bring my lunch to work and I wanted to grab a sandwich at lunch, I had to get in my car and drive to a restaurant, because again, land uses were separated at the time. So we got a great city, but a very automotive oriented city. And we realized pretty early on in the 21st century that we needed to change, because you see this slide, the rapid population growth had leveled off by the 2000s. And again, we're at about a little under 90,000 people now. But in the early 2000s, 2006, we recognized that the Big Beaver corridor, which is the most important road in the city of Troy, which at the time had about 60 to 75,000 cars a day, could be better than what it was. We had a vision to create a world-class corridor along Big Beaver, and the two projects that I'm going to be talking about today are in the Big Beaver corridor. They're not, neither are on Big Beaver, but they're within that corridor district. And we created a vision for Big Beaver in 2006. These are the key concepts. I'm not going to read all of them, but the one that I'm going to focus on today is number 4, mixing the uses turns on the lights. If you really want to be a 24-hour place, a place that you want to spend time in, you've got to have mixed use, and you've got to have residential. Otherwise, the sidewalks get rolled up at 5 o'clock. So we recognized this in 2006 when we created the Big Beaver corridor study. One of the things we did as part of this was a market analysis, and we identified that Big Beaver could potentially capture 10,000 new dwelling units over the next 25 years. Now, obviously, we haven't had that level of development and seen that level of residential, but we are seeing more residential in the corridor. So in 2008, we did a comprehensive update of our master plan. This master plan was not about controlling growth. This is about encouraging reinvestment and encouraging infill development. And it incorporated the Big Beaver corridor study. So that vision that we had for Big Beaver was rolled into this effort. As you all planners know, when you create a master plan, you implement that through zoning. So we did a comprehensive update of the zoning ordinance in 2011, and we did a bunch of things that I think helped encourage the type of project that I'm going to be talking about. First and foremost, we reduced parking requirements, and I'll get into that a little bit later, why that's important. We streamlined the approval process. We permitted mixed uses. We got away from that requirement that the different uses need to be separated. And we created the Big Beaver zoning district. And both projects I'm talking about today are within the Big Beaver zoning district. It is a form-based district. I'm not going to get into the details of what that is, but basically there's design standards required as part of the Big Beaver zoning district. This zoning district lines up very closely with the district of the DDA boundary. It's essentially the same boundary. It permits mixed use, and it permits residential by right on upper floors. This is important. So once we adopted the comprehensively updated zoning ordinance in 2011, we saw a lot of different development. We started first seeing outlot developments like Granite City and Shake Shack. Then we saw multi-story developments like the Children's Hospital on the slide to the right. And then finally, we saw Zen Apartments, which is a 270 unit apartment development on Big Beaver, and things were going great. And then COVID-19 happened. Everyone's got their own COVID-19 story. I did a lot of walking during COVID-19. Everyone's got their own story. The impacts were felt, globally, and the impacts are far-reaching, and I think probably are here to stay in some context. But let's talk really briefly about the office market. So it's pretty clear to me that COVID-19 impacts, the remote work is here to stay. Now, obviously, I was working 40 hours a week remotely during COVID. Now it's I try to work remotely 1 day a week. But I think remote work, at least in some capacity, is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And the other thing that's very clear with data is there's less demand for office space today than there was pre-COVID-19. These graphs here, there's a lot of information here. It's just two things to pay attention to. That the vacancy rate curve that you see on the slide to the left, you see it dipped during 2018, 2019, and then the vacancy rate went up significantly post-COVID to where it is now. In Metro Detroit, it's a little over 20% office vacancy. In Troy, it's 25%. And the net absorption, for those who don't know what net absorption is, and I kind of knew before I did this, but now I know, so I'll share with you. It's when office becomes vacant and office is leased, the difference between those is net absorption. So you see the slide to the right, absorption is negative. So there's office that's coming available on the market that's vacant, and that's not a good thing. So in terms of an outlook, this is from Newmark. Three things are very clear. Work from home policies are going to continue. Vacancies are going to likely increase as leases expire. There's a lot of leases that were signed pre-COVID where the leases are still in place, but the office is essentially vacant, but the lease is still there. So when these leases come up, these spaces are going to officially be vacant. And also, when leases expire, rents are going to go down. So tenants are going to get more competitive offers. Why is this important? Well, stranded assets is a bad thing. I tried to kind of explain the problem here. When we have a leveraged office asset, which means that someone is taking a loan to buy an office, so it's leveraged. There's low demand for office. Vacancies are happening. The rents go down. Now the debt can't be serviced. So there's more owed on the property than the property is really worth. So that's a stranded asset. And when this scenario happens, financial institutions start to panic, and the owner of the property is challenged. Let's park offices there for a second and talk about housing really briefly. Again, I'm going over a lot of information here, so thanks for hanging with me here. Homes are less affordable since 1960. Newsflash, right? In 1960, 68 out of every 100 Americans could afford to purchase a home. By 2020, only 43 out of 100 could afford to purchase a home. We've got a problem here with high mortgage rates, elevated home prices, and low housing inventory. There's a housing affordability crisis. How do we get out of that crisis? We build more units, construct more units. When supply goes up, the rents go down. Presently, 36% of U.S. households are renters. It's the highest this number has been since the 60s, and it appears to be going up because of the crisis. A problem with this: 30% of income or more is considered rent burden, and now the typical American is rent burdened. More than 8 million Americans are behind on their rent. That's a staggering number. And how do we get out of it? Well, we need to build more units so that rents can go down. High office vacancy rate and high housing demand is a critical storm of opportunity. So let's turn the tables on these stranded assets and look at it a little bit differently, and look at it as an opportunity to provide more housing units. So that's what this presentation is about. So let's talk about office to residential conversions. This is a chart for the source is Rent Cafe. These are the number of converted apartments in the United States from 2010 to 2022. So you see in 2022, there were a little over 10,000 units that were converted from office to residential. It's a big number until you consider that there were 971,000 apartment units under construction in the United States at the end of 2022. So 10,000 units is a drop in the bucket compared to the 971,000 under construction. 33.6% of conversions were from offices. There are all different other types of buildings that are potentially convertible to residential, including hotels, a little less than 30%. That was the second most type of second highest building type. Easy for me to say, behind offices. And we actually had a hotel that was converted to office a couple of years ago, but that's a whole other presentation. Jim, I'll make that presentation in 6 months if you'd like. But other buildings include factories and hospitals that were converted. The top city for conversions in 2022 was Los Angeles, and that's by a long shot with nearly 700 units. And in terms of looking forward, top cities for future apartment conversions. So these are conversions that are under review in the pipeline, kicking the tires, that type of thing. Still Los Angeles at over 4,500 units, but notice Detroit at number 6, 2,300 units that are online, ready for conversion. So that's a really good sign for Metro Detroit. So why convert? Why are we talking about this? Well, there's a lot of reasons. First of all, the planet's burning. I think we're at the point now where most rational people can agree with that. 90% of construction and demolition debris is generated by demolition of buildings, and only 10% of construction and demo debris is generated by new construction. So if we save these buildings and they don't go into landfill, we save products from going into landfills. 600 million tons of construction and demolition debris were generated in the US in 2020. That's just an incredible volume of debris that's going to landfill. So if we can do something to reduce that, that's a good thing. Building construction produces 11% of global carbon emissions, another staggering number. And finally, the buildings were constructed. There's embedded carbon in those buildings, and if we can keep that embedded carbon in place, we're not putting it in landfills and not generating more impact on the carbon footprint. So from sustainability, it's kind of a no-brainer. Timing. If the building doesn't have to be demolished, contractors don't have to wait until the snow melts to start construction. They can start at any time if demolition is not required. That's a good thing. So from a timing perspective, projects can get online a little bit quicker. So I'm thinking of writing a book. Let me know what you think. Office Conversions for Dummies, dumbed down so even planners can understand. So again, this is a really high level. I'm not an architect, but I welcome criticism and feedback on my title of my book. And again, a disclaimer: not an architect, not a contractor, not an economist. So only 20 to 25% of office buildings are suitable for conversion. This concept is not a magic bullet that's going to cure all for vacancies. It's one option that helps relieve the pressure that I talked about earlier, but it's not going to solve all our problems, but it can certainly help. So here's some indisputable rules. First of all, every building is different. There's no answer, not one answer for every building. Every building is different, designed differently, constructed differently, etc. So you need professionals to assist you in any efforts regarding conversion. So always use an experienced architect and contractor before purchasing a building or proceeding with a project. And this is another obvious indisputable rule. The numbers have to work. No one's going to do this for a voluntary effort. For a building to be converted, it's got to be profitable. If it's not profitable, it's not going to work. And why? How does a building become profitable? Well, let's talk about that. So floor plates. So floor plates is basically the footprint looking down from the sky, the footprint of every floor in that building. And there's an illustration here to the right. The illustrations on the left is a single loaded hallway with four rooms on the hallway. The illustration to the right is a double loaded hallway. Notice there's twice as many rooms in the double loaded hallway, so there's the potential to earn twice as much rent. So you want a wide enough floor plate that you can get double loaded hallways. Very, very important. Also, daylight's critical. The deeper the space, the less daylight that permeates into the back of the space. So it's got to find that balance. So really narrow buildings are bad because they don't allow double loaded hallways, but really wide buildings are bad because they don't allow enough light into the building. So where the balance is found, where there's double loaded hallways and natural light, that's the Goldilocks zone. So you want buildings that fall into this Goldilocks zone, which is about 65 to 70 feet wide. Daylight, very important. All these windows that are in the illustration, they're all residential windows, double hung, twin double hung, bay windows. Those are all residential style windows. And when you look at offices, they don't have these type of windows. So there's a challenge in terms of how to deal with these. Again, every building's different, but your architect is going to have to get creative in terms of how they approach daylight for these buildings. And a higher floor to floor height is better, because the higher the height, the more the daylight can creep into the back of the space. For mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, you may need to cut into the floor plates, which is expensive and time consuming. When the units are built out, you want to vertically align the bathrooms and the kitchen so the pipes aren't all over the place. They go straight up and down. That takes some creativity and some design. And individual climate control. Everyone who has an individual unit is going to want to control their own heating situation. So these are challenges that have to be addressed when these are converted. The building code is going to apply. Office buildings and apartment houses are different categories under the building code. So when these are converted, when you go from one category to another category, it may trigger the need for fire rated hallways, fire suppression, fire alarms, ventilation from the side of the building versus the roof. These are issues that may need to be addressed based on the building code. That's why you want to hire an experienced contractor and an architect. Building age. We don't have a lot of office buildings in Troy that are over 50 years old, but for some of the communities that are watching now may have older buildings. With older buildings, the facades become outdated, mechanical systems become obsolete, and there may be remediation required for asbestos that needs to be checked. So these are other challenges that need to be looked at. And place matters. If this is the view out of the building with a big parking lot and no place to walk to, you're probably not going to have tenants who are going to want to live there. So view matters, walkability, safe and convenient places to walk to, and amenities are important. So plunking apartments in the middle of an office park with no amenities within walking distance may not be successful. And ugly is ugly. If the building is, it looks like this, I don't know if the curb appeal is gonna get people to want to live there. So that's another challenge. And finally, parking lots. The parking lots, I showed you a slide from 1963 where Troy had a lot of farmers fields. Those farmers fields are gone now. And empty parking lots are the new farmers fields. Empty parking lots have development potential. And if with that stranded asset is a large empty parking lot, there's a potential to put additional residential units or other uses in that empty parking lot. And this was an important factor in both projects I'm about to talk to. So reducing your parking standards is a biggie that I'll talk about here. So let's talk about projects in Troy. This is the first one. This is located at 275 Crooks. It's Crooks runs parallel to Big Beaver, and it's a little bit south of I-75. This particular piece is a little over 6 acres in size. Again, it's zone Big Beaver, as we talked about earlier. And you notice from this slide, there was a lot of parking spaces on this site, almost 600 parking spaces. So there's your new farmer's field right there. So the existing building, here's a shot from the street, built in 1987, 3 stories and 102,000 square feet. And the developer Cypress Partners, or the architect Krieger-Klatt Architects. This is the project that was approved by Planning Commission, is presently under construction. Kurtz Road is to the right, and the existing office building that's being retrofitted is facing in parallel to Kurtz Road. So the 102,000 square foot office building was retrofitted into 90 apartment units, and that vacant parking lot had the development potential for 2 additional 4-story buildings, totaling 55 units for 200 additional units that are going to be made available for people to live in Troy. Really, really cool project. Here's the floor plate I talked about. That's the Goldilocks zone, double loaded hallway, just right in terms of the width of the building. And in terms of the windows, the drawing on the top shows that they actually, to provide more light in some of these units, they've saw cut some of the material to provide additional light for the tenant space, which is a really innovative approach. It does not come cheap, very expensive to do that. There's amenities proposed, park area, pool area. So you notice the parking lot in the before picture was basically all asphalt. This is going to provide more pervious pavement, more impervious surface, excuse me, less pervious pavement, and some amenities for the users. And this area has residential to the south and to the west, so it's already kind of residential in character, so it's a good fit. So a lot of numbers here. This was provided to me by Kelly Tim, from the city assessor, who is awesome and really helped me with preparing some of this information. So let's talk about economic impact for a second. The current value of that vacant office building was a little under $6 million, and the cash value once converted will be $13,700,000. When you add the value of the two 4-story units, the value now goes from almost $6 million to over $35 million in total cash value. So the increase is almost $30 million in value. And when you apply the millage rates for the city of Troy, the increase in yearly taxes is $755,000. $65,000 will go to the county, $144,000 to the city, and the rest to other entities such as schools. But a really big bump in tax from this project. So if you're looking for another reason why for encouraging these types of things, increased revenue is one of them. So let's talk about the second project. This is at 2690 Crooks. This is Crooks Road. Crooks runs perpendicular. It intersects Big Beaver. This is a little bit south of Big Beaver. The parcel's a little over 4 acres in size, zone Big Beaver. 335 parking spaces for this presently vacant building. This was built in 1986, 4 stories and 88,000 square feet. And here's a view of the building from Crooks. The developer is A.F. Jonah, the architect, Biddison Architecture and Design. The building is in the forefront to the left, and you notice to the right behind the building is an additional building that was able to be placed in that vacant parking lot that has so much development potential. So that the 88,000 square foot building was converted into 62 apartments, and that vacant parking lot was infilled with a 5-story 94 unit building for a grand sum total of 156 extra units for the city of Troy. So these two projects in totality will bring 356 additional units to the city, which much needed. Here's the drawing. Here's the Goldilocks zone for the floor plates. Allows for double loaded hallways. They added balconies to the facade to increase amenity space, as well as allow for natural light to go into the space. These are also very expensive, and they've added amenities such as additional open space and a pool area. And in terms of the economic impact, the cash value of the existing building was a little over $9 million. When it's all said and done, the cash value increase for this project will be $43 million, almost $44 million, for a total increase in yearly taxes of over $1 million. So again, there's economic benefits to these types of projects. So what can your community do to encourage or permit these types of things? There's some different steps you can take. From a policy and a zoning standpoint, look at your master plan, review it, review your zoning ordinance, and think about, analyze where you are in terms of parking. Do you require too much parking in 2023? Oakland County's got an initiative. We're gonna see more transit. We see Lyft and other types of options as we could become more walkable. The need for cars is less. This impacts parking, and when we noticed when we reviewed our zoning ordinance we had a zoning ordinance we had standards that were for the 60s and 70s when more people drove. So review your parking and see if there's some development potential there. You want a right park. You don't want a parking lot that's designed for the one busiest day of the year. You want a parking lot that's really reflects the needs in 2023. Also, look at how you treat mixed use. Do you permit mixed use in appropriate areas? If you don't, consider doing so. It adds these underutilized office assets as potential units. Number two is process. Look at your review and approval process. Are there barriers to these types of projects getting approved? If so, you should really look at that. And finally, look at your culture of your planning department, your building department. Does your building official, does your planning department allow for flexibility? Obviously, safety first. You've got to meet the building code, but you also, for these unique projects, sometimes you need a unique approach, and you want to be able to work with developers when they've got challenging retrofits. So with that, I thank you for attending my virtual TED Talk. And if there's any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, great job, Brent. Yeah, we do have a number of questions, and please do text or chat those directly to me for moderating here. First question up, what kind of building code challenges have you encountered converting office to residential? We've run into problems with some of the older buildings in our community, particularly when it comes to life safety measures.
Yeah, so there's not any specific challenges with these sites, but and I know my building official's watching right now, so he understands, again, safety first, but you've got to be able to be flexible within the building code. And there's not any specific challenges with these two sites that I'm aware of, but I can certainly have a follow-up, and whoever asked that question, if there are specific challenges, I can get back to that person.
Okay. And that, I think that might also include the code changes. Were there any necessary building code changes you ran into, or zoning code to get them to mesh with the building code? It might be into the ordinance amendment side.
No, so we one of the steps that we took in 2011 when we comprehensively updated the zoning ordinance was to allow residential in mixed use buildings. So from that standpoint, it was, for existing, and I didn't get into the weeds on this, but for existing office buildings, if the first floor remains office, the upper floors can be converted simply through building permits. You don't even have to go in front of the planning commission. So we can really quickly get residential units online if we have to.
Okay. Next question: what makes a building a good candidate, and what makes a building a poor candidate for these conversions?
Well, I think I got into it in some that question may have been asked before I presented some of the slides, but floor plate's really important. Again, the double loaded hallways and daylight are two critical elements. But I think step one, if anyone is going to consider one of these projects, get an experienced architect who's experienced working in the community as well as working with these types of projects, and an experienced contractor. These have to be able to pencil out. The architect's going to bring the vision, the contractor is going to bring the pencil and the paper, and they're going to be able to pencil this out and make a determination if it's going to work.
Okay. This question gets a little bit more specific. If the four walls are desirable, can the interior be salvaged?
I think the way to answer that question is every building is different. Every building has different construction materials, different design, different. They've met the building code in different ways. The mechanical, electrical, plumbing is different. Everything's different. So, I guess if you have enough money, you can pay for anything. But this gets back to case by case basis. You're going to want to walk the building and with professionals who are experienced in this, so they can identify whether it's something that's going to pencil out. It's difficult to answer that type of question because again, every project is different.
Okay. Have you had any pushback from the community related to the addition of new housing units and specifically new for rent apartments? Also, do any of these projects offer for sale housing units like condos?
Neither of these two projects offers for sale. The first project that I shared abutted next to single family residential. There was and to the south, as well as for ownership, owner occupied attached condos to the west. There's been no pushback that I'm aware of. The second project was really not anywhere near single family residential. Generally speaking, when there's pushback, it's from single family residents who are potentially impacted by the developments. I think that Troy's a relatively conservative community, but I think there is recognition that the world has changed and that we are in the middle of a housing crisis. So there's acceptance of the fact that we're going to have more rental units, provided they're in appropriate locations.
Okay. What is the floor plate width? That is the magic number, i.e. how wide is wide enough and how wide is too wide?
The magic number, it was in a previous slide, was around 65 to 70 feet. That's the Goldilocks zone for width.
Okay. All right. How has the acceptance by the planning, or what was the acceptance by the planning commission, the city council, and the public as you were making these changes?
Generally very good. Without getting into the weeds of our zoning ordinance, the Big Beaver district is a form-based zoning district. We've got design requirements and basically we want the building to relate to the street. We do that through placement and through glass that you can see in and out of. So we didn't want to just open the door and allow these just ad nauseum. We wanted to make sure that they were designed appropriately. So what we did in a number of areas in Big Beaver is if there was going to be first floor residential, that was a special use so that the planning commission had an opportunity to ensure that the design was appropriate. So that's not pushback per se, but I think it was just a recognition that design still matters, even though these are existing buildings. That first floor, as it relates to the street and the pedestrian experience, is really important. So we wanted to make sure that the planning commission and staff were able to focus on the design of that first floor.
Okay. Have any development incentives been required or requested to make these projects happen?
The quick answer is no. We aren't a community that has a lot of incentives available. There are some, but I think for both projects, because it gets back to that vacant parking lot, because the vacant parking lot had development potential, that was the incentive. So I spoke to one of the developers, and he said that when he penciled out the conversion of the office building, it was kind of a wash. You know, it was about the same amount of money to demo the building and build new as it was to convert. But I got into a lot of reasons why conversion is good, but because it was a stranded asset and he got it for a good price, the development potential was the incentive. So being able to construct an additional 110 units on the site was essentially an incentive to get the project done.
Okay. Have you noticed any difference in the review time due to any complexities or that either on the staff or on the boards and commissions involved?
Not that I'm aware of. Our we've got the best building department in Southeast Michigan, and they did an outstanding job. I know they're listening, as I mentioned. There's no issues that I'm aware of that were specific to these two buildings.
Okay. And have these projects prompted, do you have any more in the pipeline or prompted interest or more discussion and chatter at your counter regarding these sorts of developments?
There are none there's no application on file for any. There's been tire kicking on a couple. But that's the only feedback I've got so far is just tire kicking.
Okay, excellent. Those are all the questions I see in the chat. I'll give it a couple of seconds here. If anyone has any other questions, they pop them in the chat to me and we'll spread them on to Brent. All right, I'm not seeing any, Brent, so outstanding. And we'll go ahead and pass it on to Ryan. Whoops, we got looks like we got a new one here, a couple of them actually. Spoke too soon. Any issues with adding storm sewer, and what about REUs?
No issues per se. The first project provided underground detention under one of the amenity spaces. They were able to accomplish that relatively easily, obviously for significant cost because it's underground detention. And the second project is going to utilize an existing regional stormwater detention basin. So no issues per se. RDUs, you're talking about mother-in-law suites, or I guess
no, I think he's talking residential equivalent units, REUs.
REUs, excuse me. So you have to, what's an REU?
I'm thinking that's relative to the stormwater calculations.
Oh yeah, no,
single family versus the multiple.
That's new to me as working in Troy. So there's no challenges from a stormwater perspective that I'm aware of,
okay,
above and beyond any other similar type project.
All right. Another question. It looks like the property tax for these units is around $6,000 per year per unit, which is $500 per month. Is there a tax abatement for these units, or are the rents going to absorb these costs?
The rents are going to absorb these costs.
Okay. What, if you know, what is the 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom monthly rent rates anticipated?
I don't know.
Okay. Let's see here.
I know the first one on Kurtz is gonna come online starting late fall. If anyone's interested, you could probably hook up a tour with Cypress Partners.
Okay. This goes back to the REU. Just a comment: sanitary flows for the apartments versus office. That's the REU. May need to do a study of the sanitary sewer system.
Well, there you go.
And another comment on that: REU relates to sanitary sewer capacity.
Remember my disclaimer: not an
That's
engineer,
right.
Not an architect, not an economist, not an assessor.
All right. Don't see any other questions or comments. Did get a thank you for a very informative presentation, which I will echo, and I'll pass it on to Ryan.
Yes, Brent, wanted to extend our thank you to you. Great job today. For those in the development community, so brokers, real estate folks, October 27th, we're holding the Community Property Showcase event here at the Oakland County Executive Office Building Conference Center. Doors open at 7:30. This is an event that we've held pre-COVID. This is the first time after COVID that we're holding this event. So I welcome you to join us that day. So be on the lookout for promotional flyers and invitations. So again, thanks, Brent, and thank you everyone for joining us. Also want to extend thank you to Jim Schaefer, does a great job moderating the question and answer. So we'll see you next time. Thank you.